Welcome to the Larson Life Group Wednesday night huddle. I'm Jim Larson. I am a senior vice president here at Symmetry Financial Group. I am direct to the company by way of Jamie Susie and Corey Nienaber, Sarah and Jared Reinecke, Jacob Pogue in the Marshall Wayland hierarchy. I am reintroducing myself right now because I just hit record and this is going on YouTube. So I do that every time for the replay. So if you're like, I don't get it. We've been talking to you. Yes, I know. It's for the replay every time. Okay, I am going to go, or Sid, if you can find Courtney on here and you can spotlight her for everybody, and then so she doesn't feel vulnerable and alone up there on the big screen, you can highlight me right next to her, and we're gonna have a conversation. Let me just pull up this email. I saw her somewhere. There you are,
Hey,
Courtney.
Jim, I have her pinned, but you'll have to spotlight her.
Perfect. All right, I think I got it. All right, Courtney, hi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to have you on here.
Yay, I'm excited too. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be good. Lots of goodies to share. And I think it's gonna
Sweet.
be impactful.
Good. I'm gonna go read some of the stuff that you emailed over to us so I can people can properly know who you are and what you've done in the symmetry world. So Courtney's biggest team month was 90K. Her biggest personal month was 56K. She's a top producer, which is an official title in the symmetry world. It's not just something we throw around lightly. I think is it 20K issued 2 months in a row on your own pen? Yep.
Yep.
So she's a top producer. She started in 2018 at 21 years old. She hit agency owner in her first 14 months while working full time and going to school full time. Multi-year recipient of the SFG Impact Player of the Year Award, Wayland Agency Impact Player of the Year, several Shannon Master Agency Production and Leadership Awards. Won a trip last year to Cancun on production, which I want to highlight because that didn't require any of her team. So those of you that are intimidated with team building and you see all these trips and you're like, I want to go on trips, you can do that here completely on your own. Several trips, one to Marshall Wayland's Lake House. I love Marshall's Lake House. And I think the thing we're going to end up zooming in on, Courtney, is she holds a 73% ratio from getting a digital lead and converting it to an appointment, top 3% of the company in that one. That is really cool. So, hey, all of this is really cool. That last one I love specifically because I can't tell you how many people I talk to in this agency that have so much trouble with digital leads, like specifically just like I'm really just kind of ghosting the entire process. So before we even dig in, just hi, how are you? What even brought you to Symmetry in the first place?
Hi. Yes, it's always so weird to hear all of the things, right? And it's like, just getting all the accolades. But I'm very, very, very grateful to be here. And just, grateful that Sean Shannon had shared this opportunity with me. So it's interesting as I had gotten into symmetry through a family friend. I'm sorry, my aunt's family friend, right? So Sean, his daughter Ella played soccer with my little cousin Hannah. And so he had kind of shared the opportunity and I was like, no, we're not doing this. I was like, who is this? Absolutely not. And then just I had a piqued interest, kind of saw the lifestyle that he was living, and I was like, okay, all right, maybe my ears are open, right? What is it? What's going on? And I kind of had a little bit of a unique start. So I had actually started for the first several years, I started actually as his assistant. And then
No way.
he had Yep. So
What
he,
what were you doing? What were you doing as an assistant? Like, was he having you dial for him, or were you doing more
no,
admin stuff?
yeah. What's interesting is no production, no dialing, nothing like that. My very first task was issue paid. And so I learned quickly like I could see actually all the money that people were making. Right. And so like when you first start, you're like, is this real? Can I do it? Well, he had actually started me with like, okay, you turn all of them green on the spreadsheet, right? And so I'm like, okay, paid. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And he said, look, I want you to get your license. He said, because it's gonna help you to be, better as an assistant. You're able to help other individuals if you've experienced the process. Like it's part of leadership. And so I was like, okay, that's fine, and I did it. And I was like, I don't want to do this though. I don't want to sell. I don't want to. And then the more that I grasped the issue paid, the more that I saw, all of these people winning, I was like, okay, like let's do this. Like this is pretty awesome. Like I see the lifestyle, I see it's real, like it's my turn.
That's cool that you
Yeah.
came in on that like back end side of things. Cause I was gonna ask, like, how old were you when when you first heard about this? I mean, you
Yeah.
joined at 21, so you had to have been like 20, 21.
I just literally turned 21 the month before. So
Okay.
it was, yeah, brand new. I'd started in, was it May or no? Yeah, I think I like had started early on. It was like May, and then like I ended up getting licensed like 3 months later. And then from there, had ran with it. I was finishing my last semester of college. So I wanted to be a lawyer. So I was pre-law undergrad, and my heart was set on that. I was really kind of looking at this as just like extra income to really gap, the time and fill the need of what was needed while I kind of progressed on that journey. And so, yeah.
It's so cool. I don't picture 21-year-olds, at least myself when I was 21, being like, let me have a lot of foresight and wisdom and see, you know what, down the road, I like that lifestyle. I want to start doing whatever it takes to get me there. I don't picture young people like having that sort of wisdom typically.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of funny. So I tell a story. I always joke with him and say like he had drunkenly hired me. Not like there was drinks involved. So you should go out and associate. You never know who you're going to meet. Okay, you don't have to drink. I'm just saying you never know who you're going to meet. It was actually a golfing charity event, and it was funny because he had kept talking about this. I was like, no, 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 and then long story short, had actually went back and I tell people this all the time. We had went back like a group of individuals. I went back with my aunt and I saw his house. Mr. Shannon lives in like a 10,000 square foot house. And I was like, okay, all right. So remember you were talking to me just a little bit ago and I was ignoring you and I was like, who are you? Don't know you. Don't know what you're talking about. You don't live in your mom's basement. So that's good. I was like, so let's talk a little bit more. Tell me what what you're interested in just as far as, with the position and stuff. And like I said, he started me out as his assistant. But I think he kind of had a vision that I couldn't see at first, right?
Yep.
A bigger vision. And just very, very grateful that he had taken a chance on me and opened the door and shared this with me.
I love that. And what was getting started for you like? Because you're coming from already seeing behind the scenes a little bit, right? So did you feel like that helped the learning curve? Did that help with the dialing? Did that help with appointment setting? Walk me through what your learning curve looked like.
Yeah, so I feel like oftentimes people, I get this perception about like I got to work really close with him, right? And you got to see everything, got to know everything, got all this extra help. And it kind of almost made it a little harder, right? Because I know how to do things for other people. I didn't know how to do things for myself, right? And so showing up for yourself is like a totally different thing than like, hey, punch a clock, hey, do this, I'm gonna pay you this money. And I think what I had to learn, right, was figuring out how do I show up for me, right, and how can I really just, it was a mindset thing, right, and it was hard. And I think like that growth piece, right, I was good. I was used to being good at things. So like as soon as I like started on the production side, right, called like my first set of leads and embarked on that journey, like I fell flat on my face. Like, and I was frustrated. I tell people all the time, like I would quit like once a week. Like it was like, and we had a physical office. So like I literally would pack up and leave. I don't even know why Sean still talks to me today because I'm like, I would get so frustrated. I saw everybody else is doing it. I was like, what this, how? And I think the thing that helped me from being his assistant was I believed because I saw like the possibility of it. Like I saw people doing it. It was real. It wasn't just leaderboards. It wasn't just all these numbers being put up there. Like I was privileged and blessed to see the backside of everything.
Yeah.
Right. and learn really how to like, okay, this means this and this means that's in the bank account. Wow. Right. And it was like, all right, I just had to, the riddle was figuring out how do I do it for me. And I just, it's like the self-discovery part was hard for me. I had to learn my strengths, I had to learn my weaknesses, right? What I was good at, what I really needed. I had to be humble, like put the little bit of ego that I had in the back pocket. And it was hard for me to ask him for help because I had always helped him. So it was like, hey, I need help now, right? And so I think it was like a blessing. There was a lot of things I think on the belief side that really helped me with the being in the admin first. But when we talk about like just the progression of switching of that mindset of doing something for somebody else versus yourself, I think because I would actually been in this business doing something for somebody else, it was very hard to kind of like let go of that and really believe that I was worthy of getting my time back, making more money, and being a person that actually gets to delegate things one day, and not being the one that things are delegated to. So it's just a big mind shift.
Yeah, there's two things I'm hoping people pull out of that little bit right there, Courtney. And the first one is that we're trained in our culture so much to be good employees. And here's your job description, go to work. And I guarantee for so many of you, if I told you, here is your job, make 300 dials a week, set these appointments, here's your dollars per hour, you would be really good employees and you would do it. And then for some reason, there's some shift in your head that you need to figure out how to cross where when no one's paying you dollars per hour and you have to show up, but you have the potential to make way more money and it's for you and it's for your family and it's for your dreams. Why is that so much harder to work for? For some reason, it should be easier, but I think for every single one of us, it's much harder. So that's the first thing is you got to figure out how to cross that bridge to work for you. And I'm glad you brought that up. The second thing, and I just did this new agent welcome right before this call. And I told them, I'm like, all new people, I'm like, I promise you, you're here, you're excited, you're like on this road. And then eventually two roads are gonna diverge in a yellow wood. And what's gonna happen is you're either gonna trust me that the grind is worth it and you're going to figure it out, or you're not going to trust me and you're going to quit. Like you're going to go, it's going to get hard and you're going to have to choose to trust me or not. And that's literally it. Like there's no other way. I chose to trust Jamie and Jacob. You chose to trust Sean. And in those things, you had a relationship with him prior, right? You'd been that admin. You knew he was trustworthy. I knew Jamie and Sarah and Jacob for a while before. So people that come in and don't know their mentors, I'm telling you just right out of the gate, it's gonna be harder. Establish a trust relationship with your mentor because you're gonna need to trust them at some point in this journey.
Yeah. I think too, like something that you had said there, he saw the something that like in me that I didn't see yet, right? And
Mm.
so like that was huge because it was like, he didn't give up on me, right? And it was like his belief, like you hear all the times like, oh, borrow belief. And it's like, well, what does that actually mean? And I like when he shared with me, he was like, I believe that you can do this. I know that you have it in you, right? It's hard work, it's hustle, it's grit, it's passion. It's like if you want these things that you're sharing with me, it's like you gotta do something different, right? It's like you gotta put in the work. And I think a big gap is, when I had came in, even as his assistant, he was going for top contract, right? So I was on that journey with him to top contract. But I mean, he'd already been an elite producer. He already had this like big team. I didn't see that Sean when he was just that one individual agent, right? And I think that was kind of hard for me like to kind of grasp is like when he said, look, I was where you were, right? And it's time and it's activity and it's belief and it's persistency. He's like, I know
Mhm.
you can't see it, but you got to trust me.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to trust somebody, especially if you don't know them, right? Or you're just seeing them on Zoom and you maybe responded to an ad or you know them through a friend on Facebook or whatever it is. But with the incredible system that's here and all the people that are winning, it's like you got to take the chance, right? Because it just there's so much proof here for you to see day in and day out, like of people winning, right? And not even just in this organization, but just symmetry in a whole, to where it's like if you put your heart and soul into this, like you won't fail, right? It just you
Mhm.
can't do it without your heart, and your soul in it, really.
Yeah. What would you say were A couple of the most important things that you had in showing up for yourself and getting that grit and getting through that learning curve. What were some of the biggest resources you leveraged or supports you leaned on? What got you through that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, relationships definitely matter in this business. You are not alone. I think having peer association is very, very important. Growth and development is also huge. I read a lot. We did like book discussions. Like I read, did group discussions with other agents, right? I looked at these leaderboards, used them as cheat codes. Who's winning? Right? Where, like, what are they doing? I got curious, right? Brian Delaney always talks about curiosity is key. It was like, okay, well, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Right? What resources do they have? What was their start like? How fast are they going? Who do they associate with? Right. And so, I think that was a big piece of it. And it was coupled with, Sean taught me really early on about he spent a lot of time about like why I was here,
Mm,
and like why I wanted to go to law school, like why I took the chance, right? And he taught me how to keep that vision in front of me, right? Because I think it's really hard when like you can only see 2 feet in front of you, right? And it's like I will tell you even right now, nobody likes calling leads. I mean, like some of these clients are sweet, yes, and I love helping them. The impact is phenomenal. But I gotta be honest, if somebody tells you they like dialing, they're lying, right? I mean, there's a bigger vision of this, right? Like, and so when we're new and we're just looking at just the immediate pain that we're feeling, right? But we don't see the reward. We don't see what it's going to be, what it can be. We don't see our potential, right? We don't remind ourselves why we're here. It's hard to come back. It's hard to bounce back. It's hard to push through it. And so I think, having that vision, constantly checking in like with your mentor is huge, right? But you got to be positive, right? Because I learned quick, right? It's like when I'm looking at all these people, right? It's like you look at Jim, you look at Christina, you look at Jamie, they're happy. People want to be around them. You look at like they're not negative, right? They're always reading, they're always developing, right? They're curious, like they want to help people. And I learned quick, like, man, when I was negative at first, it was like, well, nobody wants to help me, nobody wants to associate with me, right? And then I just get into like my own well, and then it becomes harder, right, to get out of it. Right. And so it's like you gotta play the part. You gotta act like a top producer, act like somebody at, the top contract. How do they respond to adversity? Right. Because it's not about the successes. You're gonna have those along the way, right? Those are the easy things, right? But the difference is, well, if when adversity is present, what do you do?
mm,
Right? Do you do what you've always done and do you back down, right? Or do you do something different, right? And do you think, what would Brian Delaney do, right? What would Sean Shannon do? What would Jim Larson do? How would they handle this? And when you start thinking like that, like there's more in the tank, right? You got more to push through. There's more grit there. It's just you don't think about it right away, right? It's just you want to stay comfortable, right? But and I think it's just kind of, I know there's a lot of things. It wasn't just one, but it all kind of goes back, if you think about what I just said, is like four cornerstones, really, right? Is like it all kind of parallels back to that.
yeah, I played that game with myself a lot with the like put someone else in my shoes, and I would literally, and I want you guys to do this. I want you everyone on this call, I want you to imagine right now. I want you're standing in your life. You have your bank account, you have your physical body, you have your environment, you have your business. You are here. Now, I want you to imagine someone that you see as successful, way ahead of you. And I want you to imagine that person getting 48 hours to come into your body and take inventory. What would they do about your situation if they were in control? I thought that way a lot, Courtney. I thought, okay, what would 130 Jim do? Right? When I came back here, I knew I was going to be a 130. That wasn't a question. I didn't know how, I didn't know when. I didn't have control of the timeline, but I knew it was going to happen. So I had to start thinking like that. I had to look around at Jacob Pogue. I had to look at Marshall. I had to look at the people, Brian Delaney and Jordan Hunt. I had to look at these people and be like, okay, what would they do if they were in my shoes? And learning to think like that was a game changer.
Yeah, I would ask myself literally when I would dial, when I would dial, somebody would hang up the phone, or I'd be scared to pick it up. I'd say, "What would Lee Jadlika do? What would Lee Jadlika do? He'd call back.
Right.
He'd call back," and I would just be like crying, like he would do this, he would do this, because it's true, right? It's like you got to act like those people, and you gotta step into it. But it really does work. It's crazy.
Lee, man, this was even so those of you that have not heard my story, I came here, I lasted 4 months, I quit. So when I talk about quitting, and you're gonna feel like you want to quit, I actually did it, right? So I've been down that road. But I was on one of the Pogue calls before I quit when I was here the first time, and Lee was on the call, and he was really new then, but he was still really good, like right out of the gate. And we didn't have Zoom meetings back then. It was like free conference call. So I'm just dialing in and I'm hearing voices. And he's got this thick European accent. And he goes, guys, this is phone sales. He's like, if I can do this sounding like a Russian mechanic, he's like, you can do this. And I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good point. It made me
Yeah,
laugh.
he's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
really
awesome.
fun. Okay. So ton of different resources helping you through the learning curve. Obviously, you started in the mortgage protection world because digital leads just were not a thing. What made you or what influenced your decision to transition from what clearly had been working on some level? Why'd you switch over to digital leads when they became available?
Yeah, good question. So I got to go through all the shifts here. Like I used to go into the home, then we went to Zoom, and then we went to digital, and then we went to the phone. So I got to go through a whole bunch of change. I will tell you, I did not do it willingly at first. I was so used to doing the same thing. I was like, oh, we got to change it. But I actually, what's interesting when we talk about this specific side of like, okay, I just did mortgage protection Zoom. I got through that panic attack and I was doing it. Then they're like, hey, here you go. Here's digital. Here's this switchboard. And I was like, oh, why? No, I'm not doing that. And I told him, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that. And he actually had a conversation with me. And it replays in my head often. And it was just about leadership, and he was like, look, he said, do you want to be a leader here? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, well, leaders embrace change, right? And he's like, how can you help somebody do something, right? If you don't even know what it is, right? You don't even know how to do it. You don't have to be good at it. He was like, but you got to know it. And he was like, and you got to believe in it. And he said, so if leadership is something that's important to you here, he said, embracing change is needed. And so I got on it, fell flat on my face, and then I went back to, I was like, I'm going back. I'm going back. I tried it, and he was like, no. He was like, what would you do if one of your agents came to you and said, I'm going back. I'm quitting this, right? I'm not doing the digital. What would you say? I was like all angry and I'm like, I don't know, right? I would tell them that they would have to figure it out, right? They'd be resourceful. They got to, right? He's like, you got to do those things too. Right. And that was kind of like an aha moment for me where it was like, okay, I had gotten comfortable doing something, right? Which was the analog stuff. And at first, like I was resistant to change. And so my ego wasn't in my back pocket. I wasn't being humble enough to take that shift and say, you know what? I'm gonna be bad at first, right? I'm doing something new, right? And I got to give myself grace, right? I got to be kind to myself, right? And if you don't have the right mindset when you go into something, right, and you don't look at it through the lens of optimism, is not going to work. You're going to find 101 things wrong with it, right? And so at that time, right, it was like, okay, I had to go back to the basics and say what worked before, growth and development, right? And it was like that's what helped me in the beginning to figure out the mortgage check. Okay, so I got to get my mind right. Okay, then I got to figure out who's doing good at this, right? I got to talk to Grant Lieber, right? I got
Yeah.
to talk to Sean Lyons. Like, who are these people that are actually doing well? Let me answer the question, is this real and can I do it again? I got to answer that question for myself. And I figured out that it was, I just figured out I sucked.
Yeah.
So, and it was like then I was like, all right, now I gotta, okay, now it's real and it does work. Now, how do I get it to work for me? Right.
Yeah.
And so you go through those shifts, you know what I mean? And it's like, and when you realize it's just you, it's like that you versus you like talk yourself out of it and fight yourself from the success at first because it's hard, you know?
Yep. We're getting this question on here. just the real quick explaining digital versus analog because they're all new. Analog has been Symmetry's bread and butter. So this is us mailing a card to somebody that refinances a loan or gets a new mortgage. And it says basically, congrats on the new house, but if you died or became disabled, could your family afford to keep it? And about 1% of people are going to fill out that card, handwrite that card, hence the MI or mail in when you're in opt looking for leads, or they're going to call the number on the card, hence the CI or call in opt. That's what you're responding to. This is an analog versus digital are going to be ads placed on all the different social media profiles, Google, SEO, podcasts, YouTube, everywhere, advertising for life insurance. And someone's going to digitally click that and fill out a form. You're going to see these are going to come in the form of Razor Ridge, Lighthouse, Level Up versus going into opt and leads map that way. Those are going to be your two big differences. Okay, so Courtney, you've now embraced digital leads. Are you still working mortgage protection? Do you supplement? Do you do both?
Good question. So what's interesting is when digital leads first came out, there was no Lighthouse. It was just Razor. There was no mortgage protection. So it was just general life. And so I've worked both, but I do the general life at this point.
Okay.
I keep with that.
And
Yep.
in your process, you're phenomenally good at getting these people, these leads coming in, and it's just this automated, hey, you got a lead, then and the campaign starts, and you are very good at getting at least the resolution to setting the appointment with that person. How, for those of us that feel like we get 10 leads in and we can't get a hold of more than one of them, what does this process look like for you?
Yeah. So I would say too, guys, like remember a lead is a lead. It's a person to talk to. How it's generated is almost kind of like, in a sense, irrelevant. At the end of the day, we gotta make impact and we gotta help somebody. Right. And so when we talk about the digital stuff and we talk about like switchboard funnel, I think the number one mistake people make is they overthink, right? And they don't do enough activity. Right. And they get away. Like if, when we did the analog, right, it was like, you did the triple dial and you did this and you kept calling and, and you were very persistent. And then you get into the digital and yes, it's kind of like a different animal in a sense. But I think what people miss is that it still does take high activity, right? I think it's like the average, it takes 12 points of contact on average, right, for like engagement with clients. And so when we talk about 10, that like say you get 10 digital leads, right? You're not gonna, I mean, you can, right? I mean, I think it's possible. I don't say you can't. Yeah, not likely to just you're going to sell 10 right there, every single one of them right there in that moment. That does not mean that you're not going to sell them, right? It's just how persistent and committed you are. Okay. So like when we talk about dialing, right? I think a lot of people have, when they transition to digital, they'll lessen their dials. My dials are so very high, right? So I still do 100, $150 a day, right? And now obviously I'm not calling the same 10 people that much in a day. That's not good. Don't do that. You want to just follow the cadence on the new stuff. But then you've got your inventory of leads, right? These people that need help and you need to make impact, right? And if we knew what was going to happen tomorrow, we wouldn't need insurance, right? So it's like, okay, I got to help these people. I got to get like resolution. Yeses are good, nos are good, maybes get us stuck, right? So I want to come in contact with these people, right? So I am continually going back. I'm continually calling, engaging, doing engagement campaigns, and things like that. So I think high points of contact is important with the digital stuff on conversion. Don't overthink it like you're going to burn the lead out. Okay. You need to call it, you need to text it, you need to get resolution on it, and then you need to follow up with it. The money is in the follow up, right? You're going to sell a handful when they first come in. I usually say on average for 10, you're probably going to sell about 3, right? Right on the spot. Then the rest of the money is your persistency and consistency in the follow-up that you do with the rest of those, the clients that you haven't made that initial contact with.
Yeah, can you speak on this thing that I've seen here, Courtney? I see agents make one of two mistakes when it comes to leads pretty often. They either have this, what I call a recency bias, where they kind of just only work the leads they get in this week and maybe then last week's, and maybe if a high capacity 2 weeks ago, to the exclusion of everything that happened before that. So they're really only working recent leads. Or, and I see more new agents doing this one, they buy one batch of leads when they first start, and the whole system goes on trial depending on how well they can convert this one batch of leads they bought for $150. And they are going to squeeze that until and figure out if this is worth it or not on that. Can you speak to both the recency bias and the trying to squeeze from a very small inventory?
Yeah, so I think the recency bias is so silly. I think it's a fear that we instill, right? Because we're nervous because like, oh, it's been a few weeks, right? It's been, I don't, those aren't brand new. Like I've got this mindset that a brand new person is the only person that's gonna buy. That's the only person that needs help. And it's crazy because those people that you don't follow up with are going to buy insurance and they're going to ultimately go buy it from somebody else because you're too scared to go back through and have that conversation. Right. And so, I would think too, I know this is kind of direct, but like, I mean, you paid for it. Like, I mean, you gotta hey, get your money's worth, right? I mean, you gotta call these things, right? I mean, if it's if you're scared of no, right? It's like I will tell you, I don't know that anybody's ever really said no to me, right? Maybe they tell me, the things that you get maybe is not interested, or maybe I changed my mind or something like that. No one really says no. And if you learn how to have if you learn how to have effective and clear communication with people, you can talk through things, right? And so I think there's so much money to be made, arguably, in the follow-up because you don't know what's happening in somebody's life. Just because they didn't answer the first 2 weeks doesn't mean they're not like looking at the phone like, oh crap, that's Jim. I had to hang up. Oh man, that's Jim again. I'm not answering Jim. They're like, their kids are at soccer. You called them when they were in a meeting. Their phone was in the car they had no idea that you called. Like they're not dodging you. You just timing, you just weren't able to get them, right? So you want to go back through, right? Because it's again, there's a high importance, right? And there's a lot of money to be made. What I do is I go through when I do the dials, obviously you do the new things, right? But then you go back a week or two, but then you set time in your schedule where you go from the bottom up, right? What are the oldest, right? Let me work back, right? From the bottom up, right? What are these reschedules maybe that I haven't connected with? What are these no sales? People are terrified to go back through no sales. So much money there. Hey, things have changed. New products have rolled out, right? Insurance is easier to get than it's ever been. Underwriting guidelines have loosened up. I thought about you first, right? Like you can have conversations with people if you learn how to just effectively communicate. It's not about selling them, it's about communicating, right? And it doesn't matter if it's yesterday they filled something out or if they filled it out a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right? If you focus on a conversation and you focus on making a friend and not selling somebody, naturally you're going to find things that you have solutions for in organic conversation. And then when we talk about the $150 in 1 week, don't do that to yourself. That is the worst way to start. That's bad. That is not the system. Like that's like you might as well just leave now. Like you just like go out the door. We talk about 4 keys to a successful week, right? And I tell people all the time, it's like baking. You can't like bake a cake and decide I'm not going to put the eggs in, and then get really, really upset when the cake doesn't come out and you're angry and you're like, but it doesn't look like the picture, but it doesn't look like the picture. Well, you didn't follow the system, right? And so when we talk about 4 keys, you'll see in there that it's a continual investment, right? Every week you're investing in leads and you're doing the activity, right? Because again, if you go back through your leads and you are a good person of follow up, right? We don't know if somebody's going to answer this Monday. They could answer next Monday, right? They could answer on Friday, right? We can't guarantee the time somebody's going to pick up the phone. right? And I love the concept of 90% resolution, but it doesn't stop you from new inventory because you're a business owner and business owners require inventory each and every week because you have a family to feed, right? So you got to have that each and every week.
Yeah, man, that's so good. One of the things we throw around as a term really often is the symmetry system. And I think symmetry, well, I know symmetry system has its keys and its cornerstones and its basics and its bullet points. But almost within every agency, there are nuanced differences. So, how would you describe the symmetry system?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. So when I talk about following the symmetry system, a big piece of it is resources, activity, system, schedule. The big thing is, I will tell you, is understanding the resources. If you're not investing in resources, that means you're not going to your mentor and asking them to break it down and explain it to you. When I understood the return and Sean did the math on the whiteboard for me, and he said, look, this is how many chances you're giving yourself on average, right? This is what this could equate to. Does this feed your family? Does this feed your family? Right? How much do you need to make? And I said, okay, so I gotta learn that. Then the next piece of when we talk about the system, symmetry system here, is the schedule. That's a big piece of it too. We come in here a lot of times and we think, oh, freedom. I'm gonna do this when I want to do it, right? I'm gonna pick when I dial and pick when I this and oh, but my kid's sick and my this. Freedom isn't given and it's earned, right? And so when we give
Oh, come
ourselves too
on
much
now.
freedom,
Come on, wait, no, time out.
yeah.
Time out. Can you just say that one again? That one hit me right there.
Yeah, so freedom isn't given, right? It's earned. Yeah.
I'm
And
typing
I
that in the
think too,
comments.
guys, like the biggest mistake we make is like symmetry is freedom. So they give you the keys when you start and you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna go. I got freedom. I'm gonna pick what I do, when I do it, how I do it. If you ask any millionaire if they picked what they did, right? And what they wanted to do, right? They would be like, absolutely not. Right? They sacrificed, right? They followed the blueprints of other people that were winning, right? And the really great thing is we don't have to invent anything here. It's invented. You just got to follow the leader. But you can't like pick and choose. So we talk about a system. It's like, okay, well, I need to figure out when is the best time to dial, right? I need to ask the people that are winning, right? What leads? I got to understand the investment. I got to understand my return. I got to share my activity, right? Like I got to use the symmetry, the scripts. I don't write my own scripts, right? I become coachable as symmetry system. I share the recordings, right? Like if you aren't following the system and you're waking up every day and you're just doing things, at random, right? And you don't have structure, well, then your income varies. Like, and that's you're choosing that, right? So I think those things are pretty important when we talk about symmetry system.
Yeah, man, I love that. Put a two in the comments if you feel like, and I'm asking you to out yourself, right? So there's a little vulnerability piece in here. Hey, put a two in the comments if you're still kind of working this kind of when you want to, when it fits, and it's not driven and systematic for you. Yeah. See, I see a big opportunity right there for a lot of people. Because here's the thing, for all those people putting twos, you're just not gonna win, right? Like you're here to win. You're just not gonna win. It's not gonna work. Man, Courtney, man, bringing that up was so important. That was really good.
Yeah.
I got to shine a light on some people that needed the light shined, I think. It's good
I
stuff.
think too, like the twos in the chat, like I like all I want to say is like the fact that you put that in there, like you need to like pat yourself on the back because I know that it's hard to admit those things, but like you can't get any better if you don't if you're not humble enough to say this is where I am. Right? It's like I tell people I don't care about yesterday. I don't care about, the day before, the week before, the year before. I care about today and where you're going tomorrow. That's it. I don't care about any of that. So whatever you did yesterday that you don't want to bring into tomorrow, that's fine. We're good. We can let that go. But you have to make the choice to make the change, right? And so a lot of times when we talk about, well, I don't have a system, it's not because a lot of times not because you're not choosing to have a system. It's because sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And you got to be humble enough to ask the questions. What should I be doing? Right? Where should I spend my time? Right? What should I be investing in? Now you got to take ownership and then do the things because that's the important piece, right? But if you haven't asked those questions, it's probably because you're scared of commitment. And you can't build a business, right, without commitment. You can't become a top producer, elite producer without commitment, right? And so I think that's a big piece of it too.
If you, looking back to 21-year-old Courtney, just started this thing, what would you want to tell her now? What did she not get then that you would want to be able to tell her now?
That's a really great question. My goodness. I think the biggest thing is Courtney at 21 was she wasn't coachable. She was hesitant. She was nervous, right? Like she didn't want to fail, right? And she wasn't patient, right? She wanted it now. Um, and I think that a big piece of this business is like this isn't get rich quick. And this is like you can make a lot of money here and you can make a damn good living here, but it takes belief, it takes hard work, and it takes patience. And so, I think just the expectations, right? It's like sometimes we set the expectations. At 21, I had these high expectations. I wanted to be the best of the best, and I think that that's good, but also I needed to work on my vision, right? I needed to be able to see that the real hard work that goes into it, right? Because there's a difference of, you say you got the dream and then you got the goal of actually, what am I going to do? Changing my language, right? It's not just a dream, right? It's these are the things I'm gonna do. This is the hard work I'm gonna put in, right? I think I lacked that because I didn't have that mentor. I didn't have that growth and development. I didn't have that guidance. I knew I wanted to be successful, but I didn't know how. And I really just think if I could go back, I would read more. I would have read faster. Because I would tell you guys, if you're not reading, you should be reading at least a book a month. It will change your life. You want to get good at sales? Go to the library. There's a whole section on it. And those books will teach you better than any of us will because I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to be Brian Tracy, no matter how hard I try. But go pick up a podcast, go pick up a book, listen to it. You will become good. Like you got to invest time in you to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, Michelle is actually asking in the comments, what book made the biggest impact for you?
Yes. And it's the very first book that I read. Sean did not go lightly. He gave me the success principles. Okay. So that's like this thick. He read it with me. He made me meet with him every single week and we talked about the different principles. And that book changed my life. I read that with new agents that come in. And Jack Canfield talks about playing the part. And that, like when we talked about that earlier, that was like, I can do this. I just got to think like that person. I gotta be that person. When we talk about sales, anything like Brian Tracy, hands down, is, in my opinion, the best of the best. You want to get good at sales, listen to Brian Tracy. He is phenomenal.
Yeah, so good. One thing I love to do with guests on here, Courtney, is, I asked that question that thinking back, if you could teach new you, like brand new you, something based on what you've learned. And I do that a lot because we just have a lot of new agents here, right? That would love to like hear, okay, here's what I wish I knew when I was new. But what I like to do is I like to reverse it on you and go a different direction. So I want you live on the spot here to imagine Courtney that has achieved everything she set out to achieve, right? You are top of the company. You're making $1 million a year. You're impacting lives from generosity to like, you made it, Courtney. Now I want that woman to look at you now and what would she want? What would she tell you?
Yeah. That's a deep one. I would probably say, I think she'd want me to know that when we live too far into the future, right, right, it can be dangerous. It can create anxiety, right? When we live too far in the past, it can be dangerous and it can create a depression. right? And so I think the art of being present is a big piece, right? With the intentionality of being a business owner, and just even in sales, right? Impacting other people and getting good at what you're doing, right? And so I think that I probably would say a big piece coupled with the gratitude, right? Is like you're never too busy to be grateful. You're never
Mm.
too busy to like reflect, right? And give thanks and love on people and just be really grateful from where you're at today, because if you looked back, right, it's like sometimes we're not excited that we're not at 130 yet and we're not this and we're not that, but man, there's so much invisible progress that happens that we just sometimes we skip by, right? And so when we slow down and we practice being present, and we practice gratitude, I think that's when the optimism, right? That magic, that really kind of starts to happen in life. And so that's what I think that she would say.
Man, I love that. I put a couple things in the comments that I was hearing in that I love so much. Courtney, we are so honored by your time. It was fun for me just to get to know you, just to hear your story too. I mean, I saw you on that producer panel in Baltimore and I was so impressed. I'm like, who is this? Like, I am a fan of hers. But to hear your story and get to know you is great. Team, if you can go in the comments and you can give Courtney something in the comments that you're taking away from this that's going to make an impact in your business, because I'll tell you, she's on a lot of calls, and she's on the stage a lot. I go on lots of calls. There are those of us that have achieved things. We're on lots of calls, and we don't do that just for fun. We do that because we want to believe we're making an impact. We want to believe that what we're saying isn't just going to be like, oh, cool, we had a cool 45 minutes together, yay. She's going to want to know that this is going to impact your business this week, and that 6 months from now, and that even a year from now, you're still taking and running something that she said tonight. And that's why she shows up to do this and why she's willing to give her time. So if we can let her know, hey, I'm grabbing this and I'm running with it, that would honor her as we've been honored by her. Man, there's so much in here that's really, really good. You know what I'm gonna do?
You're so awesome.
I'm gonna screenshot these on Zoom and I'm gonna text them over to you so you can
I
you
love
can
this. You
you can
guys are
see
so
them.
awesome.
Um,
You guys.
this will be up on YouTube tomorrow. So if you want to watch it again, or if you have team members that were not able to make it live, you guys can check it on YouTube. Courtney, thank you again. Super, super appreciate this. All
Thank
right.
you so much, guys. See ya.
Bye.